Okay. Start. Hello, good morning, everyone. Today we'll discuss some remaining topics in stomach and duodenum, which are important for theory or and MCQ wise. So, one by one, we will start. The first topic is infantile hypertrophic pyloric stenosis. So, this is some people used to call it earlier. It is used to call as congenital hypertrophic pyloric stenosis, but this is a misnomer because this is not a congenital disorder. This is an acquired disorder. This the child is usually normal at birth. The symptoms or the pathology develops at the age of around 2 to 8 weeks of the life. So it occurs in the infants of age 2 to 8 weeks. It is not present since birth, or it's not a congenital disorder. So congenital hypertrophic pyloric stenosis is not a right word. So better word will be infantile hypertrophic pyloric stenosis. So its exact etiology is not known. So it's idiopathic, and some genetic and chromosomal abnormalities and environmental factors are implicated in its pathogenesis. So, in this disorder, there is hypertrophy of the circular muscles of the pylorus. Here, duodenum is normal. So, because of hypertrophy of the circular muscles of the pylorus, there will be narrowing of the longitudinal fibers of the mucosa. So there will be narrowing of the lumen. So content will not go from the stomach to the duodenum. So it's same like in case of chronic duodenal ulcer or some gastric pathology, malignancy at pylorus, there is gastric outlet obstruction. So here same, there will be gastric outlet obstruction. Content will not go into the duodenum due to hypertrophy of the muscle at pylorus. So there will be narrowing of the lumen. So how it presents, its incidence is 1.5 to 4 per thousand live births. It is common in the first born male child and more common in male infants compared to females. It's 4:1, and its onset is at on between 2 to 8 weeks and mostly around at 4 weeks of age. So there are some associated anomalies with infantile hypertrophic pyloric stenosis. Uh, they are esophageal atresia, tracheoesophageal fistula, house-funk disease, inguinal hernia, exomphalus, and hypospadiasis. So how the infant presents? The infants are usually normal at birth, so it's not a congenital disorder. The symptoms occur between 3rd to 6th week of life, and obstruction or narrowing at the level of pylorus. So bile will not come into the stomach. So there will be projectile vomiting, which will be non-bilious. So there will be dehydration. So infant will have persistent hunger, and due to dehydration, and there will be loss of weight. So on examination, like in gastric outlet obstruction, we will have visible gastric peristalsis and succussion splash, and ausculto percussion. There will be dilated stomach, or there will be a enlarged greater curvature of the stomach, but that will be not that much enlarged as in case of chronic duodenal ulcer, but here will be dilated stomach. And due to loss of water, and in vomiting there is loss of electrolyte, there will be the same metabolic abnormalities which were in gastric outlet obstruction, that is hypocalemic metabolic alkalosis with paradoxical aciduria. So child with present with non-bilious. So in this picture you can see there is a vomiting which is white color or the feed which infant has taken. There is no bile in the vomiting. So it infant will present with non-bilious projectile vomiting. And there will be visible gastric peristalsis. Like peristalsis of the stomach is from left hypochondrium to the right, from the left hypochondrium to the epigastrium to the right hypochondrium. And here you can see the video of visible gastric peristalsis. Mm, 1 second. No, यूट्यूब की जगह कुछ और ही खुल रहा है. ओके, देखते हैं ये कैसे. So this is the peristalsis from the left hypochondrium to the epigastric region towards the right hypochondrium. It started from the left hypochondrium to the epigastric region and towards the right hypochondrium. So this is visible gastric peristalsis. In case of large bowel obstruction, there will be right to left peristalsis. So it's from left to right. Excuse me. एक सेकंड आएंगे. इसका full screen. Thank you. So this was the visible gastric peristalsis from the left hypochondrium to the epigastric and the right hypochondric region. So on examination, there will be an olive-shaped mass which will be palpable, and it is due to the hypertrophy of the musculature of the pylorus. So we will have an olive-shaped mass on examination. So sometimes patient infant may produce coffee ground vomitus due to the gastritis. So blood mixed vomiting may present as coffee ground vomitus, and patient is chronically dehydrated, starvation. So there will be emaciated look. So in this picture, the child is so much cachexic. So the pathophysiology of the hypokalemic metabolic alkalosis with paradoxical aciduria. It is same like pyloric stenosis or gastric outlet obstruction. Here, due to vomiting, due to vigorous or frequent vomiting, there will be loss of water, hydrogen, chloride, and potassium in the vomiting. So there will be hypochloremia, hypokalemia, and alkalosis. So due to loss of hydrogen, there will be metabolic alkalosis. So kidney will try to compensate the loss of hydrogen, so it will secrete bicarbonate. So usually along with bicarbonate there is secretion of sodium. So sodium will lose in the urine. So but already there is so much loss of sodium, so kidney try to retain the sodium. So in replace of sodium it will secrete hydrogen and potassium in the urine. So there will be hydrogen in the urine. So urine will be acidic. So there will be paradoxical aciduria and there will be progressive hypokalemia. And in this slide, the diagrammatic representation of the same pathophysiology. Due to loss of water, there will be dehydration, and loss of hydrochloride, there will be hypochloremia. Then there will be impaired of the kidney's ability to excrete bicarbonate iron, so there will it will prevent correction of the alkalosis. So due to hypovolemia there will be secondary hyperaldosteronism, and it will act on the kidney, so kidney will try to retain the sodium, so it will excrete potassium, and there will be hypokalemia. So there will be also hypomagnesemia and hypocalcemia associated with the hypokalemia, and there will also excretion of the hydrogen ion, so there will be paradoxical aciduria. So due to metabolic alkalosis there is compensatory hypoventilation, this is the body's compensatory response, so there will be increase in the concentration of the carbon dioxide saturation, so there will be secondary respiratory acidosis. So complete will be hypochloremic, hypokalemic metabolic alkalosis with paradoxical aciduria with compensatory secondary respiratory acidosis. So its diagnosis of infantile hypertrophic pyloric stenosis is mainly based on the clinical examination, how the infant presents, and clinical examination olive state lump, visible gastric peristalsis, succussion splash, and electrolyte abnormalities. But to support the diagnosis, we can do plain X-ray abdomen, ultrasound, and barium meal. So in ultrasound abdomen, there is characteristic donut sign. There are some characteristics or prerequisites. There should be pyloric muscle thickness. Thickness of the pyloric muscle should be at least 4 millimeter, and the length of the pyloric canal will be more than 18 millimeter, and the transfer diameter will be more than 13 millimeter. On barium meal, there are following signs: string sign, shoulder sign, and double track sign. In this picture on plain X-ray abdomen, there is, due to distension of the stomach, there will be gas in the stomachs. So upper abdominal gas bubble will be visible in the plain X-ray. On ultrasound abdomen, there will be donut sign, and it is a gold standard investigation presently. So in this picture, you can see this is dilatation of the stomach, distension of the stomach. So there will be gas bubble in the upper part of the abdomen in the left hypochondrium. Here, this is a donut sign in ultrasound abdomen. In barium meal, there will be peristaltic waves. Uh, so due to this, it will look like a caterpillar. So it is known as caterpillar sign. There will be delayed gastric emptying due to the obstruction, and the pyloric canal will be narrowed. So there will be only a thin streak of the barium will pass into the duodenum. So it will present as a elongated and narrow pyloric canal, which present as a string sign, and there will be pronounced mucosal longitudinal folds. So it will present as railroad track sign, and the pylorus indents under the contrast filled antrum. So it will look like a shoulder. So it is shoulder sign, and the duodenal bulb will be dilated, and there is thin streak of the pylorus. So it is a look like a mushroom. So it's mushroom sign. In this picture, due to the this is longitudinal mucosa of the will be crowded. So here it looks like a two parallel lines. So it is a double track sign. This is a double track sign, and here this is antrum, and this is duodenum, and this is part of pylorus. So here is the hypertrophy, and here is the narrowing. So the thin streak of the barium will go into the duodenum. So it looks like a beak. So this is beak sign, bird beak sign. And here this is barium is filled in the stomach. So this is a barium filled part of the stomach. This is antrum, and this is the rest of the stomach. And here this is a narrowing in the pyloric canal. And here this is duodenal bulb, which is looking like a mushroom. So this is a mushroom sign, and this is a streak sign or bird beak sign. And here this is the shouldering at a antrum due to pyloric narrowing, and is the barium filled antrum. So here is the indentation. This is antral sign. Sorry, this is shoulder sign. In this picture, this looks like a caterpillar. So there's a peristaltic waves of the this is antrum, so it looks like a caterpillar, and this is narrowing, so this is a uh, bird beak sign or sting sign, or there will be on barium, there will be double track sign, railroad track sign due to the pronounced mucosa of the pylorus. And this looks like a mushroom, so this is mushroom sign. And here the indentation in the antrum, so it is like shoulder, so this is shoulder sign. So this is not a surgical emergency because child infant is having a pronounced metabolic abnormalities, starvation, dehydration. So it's a medical emergency. So treatment is started from vigorous fluid resuscitation and correction of the electrolyte abnormalities. And once the child is stable and electrolytes are corrected, then surgical intervention is done, which is known as procedure is Ramstead pyloromyotomy. In this procedure, we just do longitudinal incision and the muscle is circular muscles are cut down till the mucosa pop out. We do not incise the mucosa, otherwise there will be perforation and complication of the procedure. So just cutting of the serosa and circular muscles and mucosa will pop out. So it will relieve the obstruction and in post-op after 4 to 6 hours, feeding can be resumed. But if by accidentally there is opening of the mucosa, then feeding is delayed for 48 hours and or repair of the perforation is needed. Here this is in the first picture. Here this is thickened pylorus part. So we are just incising the pylorus part, and this is bulging of the mucosa and cutting of the serous and muscular part and the longitudinal incision. So we are releasing the, this is obstruction in the pyloric part. This is Ramstead pyloromyotomy. In this diagrammatic representation, we have the incision in the serosa and there is the submucosa, and this is bulging of the mucosa. And we palpate the muscle, and there will be thickening of the muscle. So we just incise the muscle, and the mucosa will be pop out. So this is the procedure for infantile hypertrophic pyloric stenosis. So the next topic is gastric volvulus. Volvulus means the rotation of something on its axis. In case of GI, there are gastric volvulus and small intestine volvulus. Commonly, there is um, colonic volvulus, sigmoid volvulus, which are freely mobile. So, if there is rotation of the stomach around its axis, this is gastric volvulus. So in gastric volvulus there is rotation of the stomach usually around its axis between the two fixed points. One is cardia and second is pylorus. So most common is organoaxial, and this is horizontal type and or longitudinal, and second is mesenteroaxial. It's there is rotation around the mesentery. In organoaxial, there is horizontal rotation. There will be two fixed parts, cardia and pylorus. So there will be horizontal at horizontal axis. There will be rotation, so the stomach will be twisted. So along the longitudinal axis, the stomach will be twisted, and this is the most common, and it could be primary or secondary. And in mesenteroaxial, the stomach will rotate or twist at vertical axis around the mesentery. The primary is mostly mesenteroaxial. It is less than usually 180 degree, and it is recurrent, and it not associated with any diaphragmatic defects, and it associated with congenital asplenia or wandering spleen. In secondary, there is will be some secondary anatomical abnormality which leads to the gastric volvulus. So it is mostly organoaxial. The most common deformity is diaphragmatic defects. In children, there is congenital diaphragmatic hernia. This is Bogdelek, this which means posterolateral defect in the diaphragm, which is usually on left side. And in adults, there is paraesophageal hiatal hernia. This is type Type 4 hiatal hernia. Type 1 is sliding, 2 is rolling, 3 is mixed, and 4 is paraesophageal hiatal hernia. So in adults, predisposing factor is paraesophageal hiatal hernia. So in this first one is this is along the longitudinal axis. This first part is fixed is cardia. This is pylorus. So this is organ axial, and this is along the this is horizontal axis. This is mesenteroaxial volvulus. So in longitudinal rotation, the stomach will be this is esophagus. So after rotation, stomach will be like this. So pylorus part be here. So there will be obstruction of the stomach. In this horizontal rotation, the stomach will rotate around its horizontal axis. So there will be twisting. Like in this picture, there is twisting of the stomach around its horizontal axis. So this is gastric volvulus, organoaxial, and mesenteroaxial. Again, this picture, this is horizontal. This is around the mesentery, and this is at vertical axis. This is gastric volvulus. In on operative finding, there is a this is horizontal rotation of the this is stomach. So there is gastric picture of gastric volvulus, and it present with acute abdominal pain, distension of the abdomen, and projectile vomiting. And due to the twisting or strangulation, there may be erosion of the mucosa. So upper gastrointestinal hemorrhage or hematemesis may be the presentation. In acute In acute cases, there may be, due to strangulation, there may be ischemia of the involved part, maybe stomach or transverse colon. In secondary type of gastric volvulus, due to paraesophageal hernia, the transverse colon may move upwards and it may lie under the left diaphragm, and it also takes stomach with it and may enter into the chest through the diaphragmatic defect. So, in acute cases, there may be ischemia of the stomach and transverse colon, and in chronic cases, due to moving of the transverse colon and stomach in the chest, there will be decreased capacity, so that there will be the difficulty in the eating. So, there may be dysphagia. So, is a important triad in gastric volvulus is Burkhart's triads. There are three things: epigastric pain, and there will be patient will be unable to vomit due to the obstruction if the content move into the chest, and there will be inability to the pass the nasogastric tube. So this is Burkhart's triad, and it is diagnosed by barium meal study or endoscopy. There will be gas-filled viscous in the upper chest or upper abdomen. On plain X-ray, there will be gas in the chest, mediastinal part, or upper abdomen. It is confirmed by the barium study and endoscopy. And its treatment is stomach is if it is only twisting of the stomach, then we just untwist the stomach and stomach is reduced and it is fixed to the anterior abdominal wall. Just derotate and fix the stomach to the anterior abdominal wall or parietal peritoneum, and if there is the associated paraesophageal hernia and transverse colon is also moved into the chest, so we have to reduce the stomach, untwist it, and we have to separate the stomach and the transverse colon and repair of the diaphragmatic defect, and mesh also can be used. And if there is paraesophageal hernia, then fundoplication, Madison's fundoplication procedure, 360-degree rotation of the stomach around the esophagus can be done. And if there is strangulation of the bowel, then dissection and anastomosis is needed. In this picture, the stomach is derotated and it is fixed to the, here these are the sutures. Stomach is fixed to the parietal peritoneum or anterior abdominal wall so that it will not twist again. Next is acute gastric dilatation. There is acute enormous dilatation of the stomach in the stomach, and there will be no peristalsis. Its causes are after major abdominal surgery or neurosurgery, and after trauma and burns or retroperitoneal hematoma, or due to electrolyte imbalance due to increased urea or hypokalemia, there is decreased gastric peristalsis. So there will be no peristalsis. So there will be acutely dilatation of the stomach. So stomach will be enormous dilated, and it will present as the vomiting, which will be of large quantity and brownish black in color, and there will be, due to loss of fluid, there will be hypovolemia and shock. And on auscultopercussion, there will be dilated stomach and there will be secretion splash positive, because there will be no peristalsis and the content will be in the stomach. So it will move on shaking, and there will be electrolyte imbalance, and it is diagnosed by X-ray abdomen or ultrasound abdomen. Treatment is generally conservative. Just treat the associated cause. If there is electrolyte imbalance, just correct the electrolytes. If there is retroperitoneal hematoma, then we have to evacuate the hematoma. And in the burns and trauma, we have to manage the patient. Fluids and electrolytes management is needed. So there is no active surgical intervention is needed. Just treat the cause, and the condition will be resolved. In acute gastric dilatation on X-ray, this is the dilated, enormous dilatation of the stomach. So on pain X-ray, there will be enormous dilated stomach. There will be large gas in the left upper part of the abdomen. Here also, this is dilated stomach enormously. So this is acute gastric dilation due to the non-peristalsis in the rest of the bowel. Next topic is gastric diverticula. Diverticulas are the small outpouching. There are small outpouching in a bowel. It may be in stomach, duodenum, and part of the small intestine, or most commonly diverticulas are in the large bowel, mainly in the sigmoid colon. But if they are in the stomach, so they are known as gastric diverticula. So there will be the small outpouching in the stomach. They are usually solitary, and it could be congenital or acquired. In congenital, there will be presence of the all the layers, so they are known as true diverticula. In acquired, only there will be mucosal prolapse. So this is known as post-diverticula. And stomach most common location is posterior cardia or fundus, and they are mostly asymptomatic. So asymptomatic cases does not require any treatment. They are diagnosed on endoscopy. But if some diverticulas are symptomatic, means there is ulceration, bleeding, or there is accumulation of the uh, food, or there may be chances of perforation, then those symptomatic diverticulars need excision. There may be endoscopic excision. If they are large enough, then open surgery is needed. So here this endoscopic view of one, this is gastric diverticula, which is small outpouching, and this is gastric diverticulum. And if it is asymptomatic, there is no treatment needed. And if causes symptoms, then excision of this diverticula is needed. And next topic is foreign bodies in the stomach. There are variety of the foreign bodies which can reach into the stomach by mistakenly, and usually it occurs in the patient who are having ill-defined psychiatric illness. So, or in child who took some object and eat it. So it can be seen on plain X-ray or endoscopy, and these usually they don't cause any harm, and they will pass spontaneously and come out. But if they are symptomatic, then we have to remove it by endoscopic mean, or if they are large enough or on endoscopic manipulation, there may be chances of further injuries. So we plan for open surgical intervention and remove the foreign body from the stomach. Like seeing there are bezoars, like collection of the non-digestible material into the stomach. They are non-digestible, so they just accumulate into the stomach. The concretions there will be accumulate there into the stomach. So there are different types. Most commonly is phytobezoars and trichobezoars, pharmacobezoars, lactobezoars. We will discuss them one by one. There are risk factors for all the bezoars, or mostly for phytobezoars. any previous gastric surgery or impaired gastric emptying or diabetic patients with having autonomic neuropathy or cystic fibrosis in infants, which may lead to the condition of Bezos. The most common is phytobezos. This is most common type, and this is a collection of non-digestible food particles of fruits and vegetables. Because in some fruits there is high concentration of tannin, which will react with gastric acid and form a coagulum. So it will not pass distally, so it will accumulate, and slowly there will be further accumulation. So the fruits and vegetable part will be accumulated into the stomach, so it will present as phytobazor, and the patient, due to filling of the stomach, patient will present as early satiety. There will be sense of nausea and there will be vomiting, and patient, due to early satiety and not taking enough food, there will be weight loss, and on examination there may be palpable mass of the fruits and vegetables into the stomach. So it is diagnosed by barium study or endoscopy. By endoscopy, we can see accumulated fruits and vegetables, and they are treated by usually by enzymatic therapy using trypsin and cellulose, which dilutes the coagulum. Or if it is not possible, some after enzymatic debridement, we do gastric lavage or endoscopic fragmentation of the this is coagulum, and or can be removed endoscopically. Here the picture of the this is two pictures of this is phytobazos due to banana. Some patients who eat complete banana, so it will accumulate into the stomach. So this is also coagulum of this is fruits and vegetables. So this is phytobazos. On endoscopically we can diagnose it, and endoscopically we can dissolute and fragment it, and we can remove it. Second is trichobazole. This is a collection of hairs into the stomach. It usually occurs in the children or long-haired girls. There's some female patient, psychiatric patients who eat their own hairs, who have long hairs. This is known as trichophagy, and there will be accumulation of the hair balls into the stomach. It may lead to ulceration, gastrointestinal bleeding, and perforation. And same, it is diagnosed as on endoscopy or plain X-ray, and they usually require endoscopic removal or surgical intervention and psychiatric care, so that patient will not eat the hairs further. And there is also one syndrome known as Rupunjel syndrome. Due to accumulation of the hairs in the stomach, the gastric vessels, there will be extension of those hairs into the duodenum. So the hairs will take up the shape of the stomach, and there will be streak or extension of the hair into the duodenum. So in trichobejas, the psychiatric female patients who have long hairs and habit of eating their own hairs, so there will be accumulation of the hairs into the stomach. So it may take up the shape of the stomach, and it will present as trichobazos. In Rupunjel syndrome, there is a accumulation of hairs in the stomach, and there will be extension. Here, this is take up the shape of the stomach. This is the fundus body and antrum part. This is duodenal bulb, and here is the extension of the hairs into the rest of the duodenum and small bowel. So this is Rupunjel syndrome. Pharmacobazole is a retention collection of the this is retained concretion of the medications which get accumulated into the stomach. There are also same risk factors like bowel hyperactivity, decreased gastric motility, and dehydration, and there is concomitant use of anticholinergic and narcotic drugs. Usually, it occurs in anticoated aspirin, sucralfate, cholestyramine, aluminum hydroxide gel, enteral feeding formulas, or mesalamine. So for this, dissolution and surgical intervention is needed. In this picture, you can see in this specimen after cutting the incising the stomach, there is accumulation of this drugs which are non dissolving, and in barium meal, we can see this is contrast and the medications. So it is diagnosed on barium meal and endoscopy and of surgical intervention or a dissolution therapy is needed, and or surgically we can remove the accumulated drugs. Lactobacillus usually occur in infants due to ingestion of the this is formula feeds. There will be compact mass of undigested milk concretion. So treatment is just withhold oral feeding, and after some time, the it may heal. It may correct spontaneously, and there may be one condition trichophytovagus. There is a mixture of hairs, fruits, and vegetables usually occur in the psychiatric patients. There may be some dead ascaris in the stomach or small intestine. It may present as the warm bezos. Next, in duodenum, there is a condition is duodenal atresia. Atresia means there is failure of the vacuolization of the duodenum. So there will be no continuity in the duodenum. So from embryogenically, from its solid cord stage, there will be failure of vacuolization. So there will be incomplete development of the duodenum. So there are four different anatomical variants. First, there may be duodenal stenosis. There will be narrowing in the duodenum, or it could be there will be intact muscular wall, but the mucosa will be like a web. So it will present as a windsock deformity. Contents will come, and at mucosal web they it reflects it back. So it acts as a windsock. So it is known as windsock deformity, and there may be cord-like structure. There will be two formed end of the duodenum, and in between there will be fibrous cord-like structure, or maybe the complete two ends are completely separated. So type 1 is membranous only. There may be stenosis or maybe mucosal web. Type 2, there will be a fibrous cord. This is fibrous cord. And type 3 is complete separation. Two ends are completely separated. Here, this is atresia. Part of the duodenum is there is no vacuolization, no developed. So this is part of duodenum is formed, and rest of the duodenum is normal. And here is fibrous cord, maybe mucosal web, or there is stenosis. So here is dilatation of the part of the duodenum, and there will be not much dilatation. So here is stenosis, or and here's mucosal web, or complete separation of the duodenum. And it's a mnemonic duodenal atresia. There is a sign, double bubble sign, and it's associated with Down syndrome. There are following anomalies which are associated with duodenal atresia, like prematurity, Down syndrome, polyhydramnios, malrotation, annular pancreas, and biliary atresia. There may be some cardiac, renal, esophageal, or anoductal anomalies, and it presents as bilious vomiting because the obstruction or the anomaly atresia is usually distal to the ampulla of Vater, so there will be bilious vomiting. It is diagnosed on X-ray abdomen. There will be a double bubble sign. One due to the air-filled stomach. Second is of duodenal bulb. So there will be two gas shadows into the plain X-ray, and confirmation if there is no distal air into the rest of the duodenum. Treatment is diamond-shaped duodenostomy. In this picture, this is dilated stomach, and this is dilated duodenal bulb. Here is atresia. So there will be two bulbs. First stomach, and second is duodenal. So there will be two bulb sign, double bubble, there will be two bubbles, double bubble sign in case of duodenal atresia. So this is diamond shaped duodenostomy. This is diamond shaped duodenostomy. In this picture, in diamond shaped duodenostomy, there is if there is a fibrous cord or thin stick, we will not remove it, and just in proximal part we will give a horizontal incision, and distal part we will give a longitudinal incision. So angle of this is fixed with the midpoint of this, and this angle will be fixed with the stitch with the lower part of the midpoint of this. So its angle will be stitched with the midpoint of this. So in this picture, the horizontal incision we are extending it, and the longitudinal incision. So its midpoint is its angle is fixed with this angle is fixed with this midpoint, and this angle is fixed with its proximal midpoint. So it will like a diamond shape anastomosis. So this is diamond shape duodenostome. Sideways anastomosis, side to side anastomosis of the duodenum in a diamond shaped manner. So this is duodenostomy in case of duodenal atresia. In this picture also there are two bubbles. They are important MCQs, double bubble sign, and there is a complete separation. Then duodenum. Duodenum is connected to the. If there is complete separation, then we have to do duodenum, and rest there is no need to remove, just to side anastomosis. And one more pathology is duodenal diverticula, and there is also like in stomach there are diverticulas in the duodenum. This could be primary or secondary. Primary are usually congenital since birth, and they are having all layers, or they're the two diverticulas. A patient is usually asymptomatic and usually present in the second or third part of the duodenum. The diagnosis made by endoscopically, and treatment is endoscopically excision or open method. But if the diverticulars are symptomatic, usually they are asymptomatic, so they don't need any treatment. In secondary diverticula, which are always acquired, maybe due to the cicatrized chronic duodenal ulcer. Due to cicatrization, there may be outpouching of the this is mucosa. They are the commonest type of variety, and they usually occur in the first part of the duodenum. Here in duodenal diverticula, there will be trifoliate duodenum on barium mill X-ray. That's an important MCQ. Trifoliate, it looks like three leaves, and treatment is truncal vagotomy. We just divide the vagus at its trunk, so to decrease the acid secretion, and posterior gastrojejunostomy. Posterior means through the transverse mesocolon we make a window, and jejunum is put behind the transverse colon, and anastomosis. There are two layers of the stomach, anterior and posterior. So we anastomose the loop of jejunum to the posterior part of the stomach by making a window in the transverse mesocolon. So it will be a isoperistaltic posterior retrocolic gastro posterior gastrojejunostomy with truncal vagotomy. Here, this is diverticulum, outpouching of the mucosa. This is a picture showing the duodenal diverticulum. And this is how in barium meal it looks like a trifoliate, three leaves. This is three leaves, trifoliate duodenum in case of duodenal diverticulum. Next condition is chronic duodenal ileus. It is also known as Wilkes syndrome, superior mesenteric artery syndrome, or arteriomesenteric syndrome. It is due to there is normally obtuse angle between superior mesenteric artery and aorta, but if there is decreased angle or there is an acute angle, so the duodenum will be compressed in between the superior mesenteric artery and aorta. Usually third part of the duodenum compressed between the superior mesenteric artery and aorta, then it leads to the obstruction of the proximal first and second part of the um, dilatation of the first and second part of the duodenum, and obstruction at the third part of the duodenum. There are some aggravating factors like plaster cast, lordosis, enlarged lymph nodes in the third part of the duodenum, or maybe some pancreatic tumor which may leads to the duodenal ileus or duodenal obstruction. So here in this picture, usually angle is obtuse, so duodenum will come, third part of duodenum come through this supramesenteric artery and aorta. But if the angle is acute or after applying some cast, there is a narrowing of angle. So duodenum third part will be compressed. The third part of the duodenum will be compressed between supramesenteric artery and aorta. So it leads to the obstruction of the third part of the duodenum. So this is chronic duodenal ileus. Here also in this picture, this is duodenum is compressed between the aorta and superior mesenteric artery. This CT film is showing this is aorta and this is superior mesenteric artery. This is aortomesenteric angle, and this is duodenum, which is compressed in between aorta and superior mesenteric artery. So Here there will be no case in barium meal. There will be no barium in this compressed part, or there will be streak will go into the distal part, so the proximal part be dilated. So this is third part will be obstructed. So how it will look in the barium meal? So it will present with the bilious vomiting. There will be, due to distension of the proximal duodenum stomach, there will upper abdominal fullness. There may be visible peristalsis, or due to loss of due to vomiting there will be dehydration. So it is diagnosed on barium meal, and if any doubt, then CT scan can be done. And treatment is duodenojejunous. Duodenum is inside resected and it is anastomotic to the jejunum. So duodenum and jejunum are anastomosed. So treatment is duodenojejunostomy. So this completes our complete stomach and duodenum. So next class, small intestine is also completed and appendix. So next class we will discuss about intestinal obstruction. Thank you.